A very good evening, all. Just few checks. Am I audible? Am I audible? Very good evening, all. That probably maybe because I'm not speaking, but let me just check. Uh, are you able to hear me now? I'll just check. We got okay. Just allow me. Okay. So I guess now our audio is fine. Quickly checking with audios and perfect, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Urvashi ma'am. Uh, I'm really delighted to be conducting this live session for all of us. Uh, as I requested, this should not be specific to anybody in a specific stream, but the prime objective of this session is to just bridge up the understanding around it. So I'm just taking few more seconds and welcoming you all. We got members joining in still, so just that people do not miss out. I'll just take few more minutes and we'll then proceed. In the meanwhile, let me just introduce myself. I am Archie Jackson. I'm actually working as a senior director for technology and security for INCIDO organization, and these seminars, these sessions I usually conduct to spread the awareness across India. And over the past 2.5, 3 years, I have actually conducted sessions and spreaded awareness around security for almost like 12,000 plus students. And for Manav Rachna, uh, first, I really appreciate and thank Dr. Suresh, uh, Dr. Urvashi for inviting me today to conduct this session for all of us. I wanted to make sure that we have the right context before we start upon. So just as I go ahead with my introduction, so I did my engineering long back and then pursued multiple certifications, say it be into technology, into cloud, say it be project management, say it be security. Um, if if we are not connected over social media, we can definitely, I welcome you all to connect with me over LinkedIn or Twitter. You can also follow up on this open channel of YouTube, which has been created to spread awareness. There are a lot of important videos. So in case if anybody uh, wants me to blend the language, I can converse between English and Hindi. I can use two different verbiage and languages inculcated together so that we can have better visibility and understanding around the session. Second is, please feel free to put in your questions in the chat. Towards the end, last 30 minutes, I'll answer a lot of questions that you'll be putting in. I'll be happy to answer those. You can put in all kind of questions around security, privacy. I'll be happy to share my thoughts around those. Uh, I've been part of a lot of organizations previously with Genpact, Sopra Steria, NHS. I spent some time in the UK as well with the healthcare. Security. Let's first talk about important aspect around why security and why we are talking, why we are having this session today. Um, yeah. So I'm actually smiling on the chat, reading these chats as well. So feel free to put in your thoughts, your questions. Happy to answer those. And do share the link of this chat with your friends, the sessions with your friends, colleagues, and all, so that they can join and take the best out of it. Because this is open. This is not inclined towards any specific curriculum or syllabus. It's more of an understanding around why security and why privacy and why it's so important around the current environment. So at first, all those who have joined, very importantly, why security? It's primarily because it's everything is digital nowadays. We are at home, and we are accessing internet. We are attending our classes, classrooms. Everything is over internet. We are using our banking. We are using everything over internet, and the entire security is uh, circulating and circling around this entire blanket of internet that is being accessed from our homes, the mobility. So even from the career standpoint, let me talk through why security should be a part of your career, irrespective whatever stream, whatever domain you are. Even if you are from a finance background, HR background, technology, engineering, civil, mechanical, any kind of engineering, it's very important that we have the flavor and the understanding around security, because tomorrow when you'll be on job or uh, having your own business or whatever startup or what kind of whatever kind of engagement you may be having, these things, this understanding would be highly important and integral to create a secured environment of your business. Because let's say if you are a into a finance background and works in a bank, unless and until you have the understanding around how banking works and how security is important in terms of banking, uh, that job doesn't uh, completes, because you should also have the understanding around how you manage your passwords, how you manage your entire security platform in terms of finance, in terms of any kind of manufacturing. Uh, yes, I'll answer all the questions. Please feel free to put in the questions. I'll uh, address those towards the end, just to avoid the flow does not get deviated. So a lot of threats and security and privacy, the career, if you develop and design your career into this direction, it's highly important and highly lucrative. So there is a huge demand of people with security mindset. And why there is a demand? Because there is a very conceptual and uh, I would say a psychological reason around security. So over the chat, you can comment how many of us understand social engineering. Um, these are the human behaviors which are exploited by the hackers. So social engineering, what, how those things are exploited. So let's open up over the chat as well if you are aware of social engineering or want me to elaborate onto it. Uh, Social engineering is a phenomena of exploiting uh, human behavior, and human behavior which triggers curiosity, uh, a sense of curiosity, a sense of fear. Let's say you get an email stating that your bank account would be locked if you do not click this link and send this information or revise your password. Or uh, let's say in terms of greed, another human behavior, you get a message or a text stating um, there is you'll be getting some benefits around your taxes, some credits over the WhatsApp. You get a lot of such stuff. So All of that is quite important, and social engineering exploits these behaviors. So primarily, if we talk about social engineering, uh, these are the trigger. This is the foundation of any security or privacy impact exploitation by the hackers. So, and just like yoga, just like yoga, you cleanse your throat, you gargle in the morning, you brush your teeth, you have a lot of yoga in terms of alom vilom and all, so that whatever you breathe fresh air, you eat fresh, your stomach is healthy. All of those, and these are ports. If you resonate with yoga and technology, these are the open ports, and if uh, if you do not put the right input, the output would definitely be something distorted or improper. And similarly, on the same lines, if you leave out any important port or access vulnerable, these are the vulnerabilities that we talk through. And uh, if those are not secured enough, we would definitely be compromised. Now, let's quickly talk through about dark web, or let's first talk about. I'll touch upon dark web as well, but prior to that, let me talk about digital footprints. Digital footprints are highly important nowadays. So even in recruitment, when you are uh, as an organization, as a leader, or people who are recruiting nowadays, it's not only the resume that people see, they also go through their social media platform, their websites, their Facebook accounts. They refer the history, how the characteristics, how that person is, and a lot of behavior around those. So the digital footprints are the footprints, the history, the information that gets captured over the internet while you're browsing through different websites. And just like Google, just like Facebook, you might have experienced that you're accessing um, some product over Amazon, and it's visible over Instagram, it's visible over Facebook. All of those products are visible in those platforms as well. How and why? Because when you are accessing an application, you agree to some terms and conditions. It's very important for all of us to understand and resonate and review those terms, conditions before going ahead with the installation of an application, or before going ahead with any uh, any specific installation before those applications are onto your system. So let's say an application, and now moving on in that particular direction, when an application is installed, let's say a very strong application which is WhatsApp, or let's say a very strong application which is Facebook, you install those applications onto your system. It asks for your contacts, access to your contacts, it asks to access your photographs, it asks to access your microphone, it even asks to access your geolocation, the location as well. So these, a lot of such access are requested by these applications, and when we accept this, that means that particular application would have, during the application, while the application is running in the background, it has access to all these parameters. Now, since it has access to all these parameters, even while it's not being used, that application has that permission. So assume somebody hacks that application. Let's say there is a bug in that application, and that's why bug bounty programs are there. So if there is a bug, and something goes wrong with that particular application, your access, your data, your images gets compromised. And the moment those things get compromised, that application, irrespective, it's because of the flaw or some bugs in the configuration of that app, or it's the app itself trying to capture that information. And a lot of applications have been banned over the period because they have been identified, a lot of monitoring tools or tracking tools in those applications and that's the reason why those applications have been blocked. Now, when those applications are blocked, uh, you ensure that information is not cascaded, not transmitted over the internet. So this is one particular aspect, only simple aspect around those applications. Apart from that, there are various other. I mean, just going a step beyond now. Let's imagine uh, satellites. Let's say satellites. How airplanes fly in the air. So it has been a very important saying. It has been very popular that the future, the world war, and all of that would not happen with guns or anything like that. Uh, it would be more a security kind of a war of security and privacy, and technology would be the ammunitions. And by that, I mean how I can resonate with that is because let's say it doesn't need arms or nuclear weapons to attack airplanes. That was legacy. Now, if we look at airplanes flying, if we look at navy ships in the or submarines in the oceans, they resonate. They speak to the satellites and get the directions. They get their trajectories. Suppose those things get breached or hacked by hackers, an airplane may lose the direction and get lost in the air. A submarine can get lost in the ocean. And that's how hackers try to penetrate the satellites. If you go on to a lot of websites, Trend Micro, Checkpoint, on that particular portal, you can see on real-time basis how many attacks are happening from one country to another in a real-time basis. There are a lot of tools over the internet. Uh, Shodan is one of the websites where you can actually in real time look at things that are there, open, vulnerable, and which are there, and what the level of attacks going between countries. All of that is very strongly visible over the surface web. Now, coming to the dark web, it's I would suggest with that we avoid going onto dark web. It's not an encouragement. And however, security researchers do go onto dark webs because there is a lot of information, a lot of research kind of work that also gets done over dark web. But the percentage, the proportion is very less. People over dark web use the dark web for a lot of illegal stuff, drug trafficking, pornography. Um, I mean, you name it, it happens out there. And the anonymity is maintained because that environment is completely meshed without any intersections. It's not associated with any of the ISPs and trackings and all of that. It's completely uh, anonymous. 20% of the internet that we access nowadays, YouTube, Google, Gmail, everything, that's over the surface web. There's a dark web, there's a deep web. There's a way to get onto the dark web to ensure, because it's actually once we go onto the dark web, keeping our own self, our own system secure is highest priority. There are so many links which may mislead you to click and access, and the moment you access that, your information gets compromised. So while we are at dark web, it's very important that we make sure the links or the information, we have thorough knowledge, thorough deep dive research completely done for dark web before getting onto dark web. And the positive around dark web is a lot of positive journalism happens out there, a lot of research, security research happens, a lot of Android, iOS operating systems, vulnerabilities, bugs are discussed. There are a lot of forums, a lot of positive, but that positive is very less, and negative, the legal part is much more beyond to the limit of even our thinking. So it's always recommended not to go onto the dark web. unless and until you have thorough understanding and are completely clear about the legalities and illegalities of going on to dark web, and you are a security researcher, that's when we may choose to go onto dark web and do our research in a positive direction instead of moving on to anything illegal. Um, and another aspect, and why I'm touching upon all these aspects is because when we are over the internet, let's say you use your mobile phone to access your banks nowadays. It's very limited that we access our banking while going in person to the banks for transactions. Most of the stuff is done over UPI or particular apps, and there is an authentication mechanism that we use. There is a video that is there on this channel. I'll also take a pause. Do share this channel. There is a lot of information, good learning, and you can also comment, share your information around what all information you like to see. Those videos would be created, and we'll share those videos for learning. And those videos are very strongly focused for the Indian audience, because the intent of this channel, this TED Shark Labs channel, is to ensure spread awareness across India, and especially across universities, schools, colleges, the new generation, the generation that would be the future of our nation, to be completely aware from the conceptual perspective, not from the technological perspective. First, our foundation around those concepts should be strong, and then that technology would be built up. So technological aspects, happy to answer those, but the concept should be very clear. Let's say we have passwords. We use passwords to access our systems, our portals. Nowadays, everything is locked with a password. That's a lock that you put onto your doors. But the conception that we have, or the misconception that we have, is if we have a complex password. Let me ask all of us here over the chat, how many of us think, or what do you think, which is more secure, a complex password which is alphanumeric, or a password that is longer in length? Which one is more secure and why? Do answer that over the chat. I'll be happy to see your responses. I'll answer that in few minutes while I talk about the authentication mechanism. So while you're accessing your applications over the internet, let's say a banking, or let's say if you're doing some share trading, if you're accessing your banks, your social media applications, everything is governed with passwords. Next, when you access that, it moves into a second phase of authentication. It sends you a code over an SMS to your mobile phone, and that SMS, when you type that SMS into the system, it will give you an entry to the particular portal. It will realize that, okay, you are the right legitimate person, and you are allowed. However, those who have read mobile telephony or network security or networks, there is a terminology, there is a protocol known as SS7, Secure Socket 7 protocol. That protocol is used while we are roaming in a mobile network. When we move from one network to another, from one cell site network to another cell site, that roaming happens. And earlier there was used to be call drops. Nowadays, there is a handshake, and the call gets routed from one site to another as well. But the protocol that works is the Secure Socket 7, SS7 protocol, that enables your phone call to be transmitted from one signal or a service provider to another service provider while you're traveling. This benefit, or this ease and comfort of phone calls, is exploited by bad guys, the hackers, and that is how your SIM card spoofing happens. Let's say you access your password, your information is already compromised from the password perspective. Now, the only thing to access your banking, I'll need the OTP. And to get that OTP, I'll need your SMS that you get onto your mobile device. And that mobile device for SMS can only be received onto another SIM card if I spoof that SIM card onto another. And that spoofing happens by exploiting the SS7 protocol. So, in the nutshell, how we can be secure about that? So, the way we can be secure about this is to use the SIM card pin. Always keep your SIM card pin enabled, so anytime when that SIM swap happens, the bad guy would also require to have that particular pin to move that SIM card to another SIM card using that code that they use. So now coming back to my previous question, so which one is more secure, a lengthy password or a complex password? Most of us must be aware a lengthy password or a passphrase is more secure versus a complex password. And that's a human thought process. It's a human thought process that something that is complex. Since humans are, it's difficult for a human to remember a password that is complex. We assume that it would be complex for a computer as well to remember or decode that password. However, computers run over bits and bytes, zeros and ones. So irrespective if it is simple, irrespective if it is complex with alphanumeric capital or whatever, it will still decode that into zeros and ones. What's the big deal? Now the point is, if we use an ASCII coder or a password cracker using a GPU, it will take a particular X amount of time to decode a particular length of characters. So a password can be breached with the help of the characters, the number of characters that you use. If it is 64-bit, so the longer the password would be. If I use passphrase as a sentence, let's say a simple passphrase. A simple passphrase could be, I wake up every day at 7. So it also includes a simple capital I, uppercase I. At 7 can be used as special character. 7 can be a number. And I always wake up in the morning at 7. It's a passphrase, it's a lengthy one, and I can remember that. But if it will take years to decode that or hack that password versus any password that is smaller. Over dark web, over a lot of, even over the surface web, we get a lot of rainbow tables, which is an inventory. So if I even have the hex code, the hexadecimal codes of those passwords available to us, I can simply do a VLOOKUP of that inventory or look up in that particular rainbow table and get the associated password and use that. And at the first layer of hack using a lot of different mechanisms. So, but how would a bad guy get your password? The initial level of entry. A bad guy would get the initial level of password with the help of phishing. Phishing is a terminology which many of us ignore. We access websites, we accidentally access emails, we click on links. We should, let's say a website that has I in it, or a URL or a particular domain, let's say ICICI Bank. What if that domain is LCICI Bank instead of ICICI? It will still appear to be I, a capital I or a smaller I, an uppercase I in the URL. And that's how human gets decepted. And these are the ways people create different domain names which would appear to humans as spoofed websites, and then create a dummy replica website where you'll put in your initial credentials as well, and that goes to the bad guy. And even if that kind of a protocol of multiple steps is not there, even if there is a phishing email and there is a link, the moment you click that link, there must be some malware that gets installed. There must be some kind of a tracking cookie or some tracking malware onto your system. How many of us understand ransomware? So ransomware in simple term is my system gets locked up and I'm not able to function. And ransomware as an example is one of the greatest example of cyber warfare. NHS as an example, the complete healthcare of the UK came to standstill at the time of WannaCry. WannaCry was a ransomware outbreak across the country where the root cause, the exploitation happened because of Windows operating systems, older versions, some unpatched operating systems which were there. So it is very important, some of the best practices, that we make sure that all the security updates that pop up that we ignore or ask to remind me later, those uh, are always given a priority, and we should make sure that the security updates for any application or software solutions are made updated onto our systems. So at times of WannaCry, the exploitation happened onto the operating system of Microsoft, which had older versions and didn't have those security updates. Simple. Human ignorance. That human ignorance caused the standstill, a complete standstill of the entire nation's healthcare, because that country has a centralized healthcare which is controlled through central computers. All hospitals, let's say dispensaries, everything is centralized. So the moment that ransomware spread it across hospitals across the country, those systems get locked up with that red screen. And the moment that WannaCry locked up the systems, nobody had the visibility of what is there. I mean, what could be done next, because those systems were completely locked. Nobody has information about which patients have the appointments, what kind of security procedures are to be done. So they had nothing. So all the operations, all the medication completely came to a standstill for the entire country. This was an example of cyber warfare. Ransomware and such outbreaks are example of cyber warfare. And the root cause, the simplest root cause, it's not technology. It's not at all technology that can mitigate security. It's the mindset, and that's the reason why we are talking talking today. Because you are the generation that would tomorrow work into organizations. You will be playing a lot of important roles. If you have that level of visibility, if you have that level of mindset, if you have that level of understanding, you would be able to look from a different perspective. And the moment you have that visibility of looking at a design from a different perspective, you would be able to give a complete ideal solution for an organization, for a particular business. And that's why my focus is for all the students from colleges, universities to go through these programs which I conduct for free. And these are awareness programs. And I also conduct further deep dive modules where, and all there's no cost, because my prime objective is to lead at least more than 1 million in India and train, bring them up to speed from the colleges and universities. I've affiliated with a lot of universities, a lot of states as well, to share that level of learning. And this is as a hobby, because my prime profession is as a technology leader in an organization. So this is what I do as a hobby, to share what I learned and some conceptions and some mentorship around those directions. And that is how we learn. So coming back to the same point, similar thing, a basic thing of having an HTTPS and HTTP as hypertext transfer protocol and hypertext transfer protocol secure, that S in HTTP is misleading, because we understand that the word, the alphabet S denotes secure. Actually, it's not secure. It should actually be HTTPE. It's more of an encryption. It's not security. It's encryption. And what exactly encryption is for anybody to understand? If I'm communicating in English, you understand English, but somebody who doesn't understand English is listening to our conversation from the middle. For that particular person who doesn't understand English, it's encrypted communication. So, however, the sender and receiver have those keys to understand and decode whatever the communication is happening. So, in a language communication is also an encrypted communication if a community or the group of people doesn't, the other people do not understand that language. But over the website, when you put in the HTTP, if you put in your user credentials, anything that you put in, the only difference between an HTTP and HTTPS is whatever you put onto a website. If you type in your URL, your username or a password, it goes as plain text. So even someone who is a rookie hacker, a very early stage hacker, they can intercept from as a man in the middle and gather that information. Versus if you are putting in your information over an encrypted website, which is an HTTPS, it can be, I mean, that data, those packets can be decoded and compromised very easily, but it would need more efforts, more decoding of that encryption is required. Those keys are required. So that communication gets encrypted, and that's why we call it as secure. So while we are over a banking website, we must look at the HTTP and HTTPS and anything like even social media. So few learnings, few of the takeaways, a quick takeaways from the first 30-40 minutes of our session are: we as an individual, instead of focusing at a technological level at the start, we should first create our mindset in the right direction. Think like a hacker, think like a designer, understand the flaws, and then look at a perspective. Technology definitely comes into play, but understanding the platform, the basics, the foundation, that is very important. Phishing is the very prime source of data breaches. Social engineering is the concept, the methodology through which we get compromised. Ransomware, phishing, patching updates, passphrase, these are the few things that we should keep in mind, and the access that we grant to different applications. That is something very important for us to remember and make sure we incorporate in our daily hygiene of internet surfing. Coming to other different aspects, I'll take a pause and quickly go through some of the questions, and I'll then continue further. I can see, absolutely, Sagittarius Shukla, very rightly said. Very impressed to see your comments here. A lot of important points that you have outlined. Yes, brute force and how those things get compromised. There are things. Yeah. So there are things. Let's say now coming to the technological part. As a business, so let's understand what security means. Security is something as a reputation. Security, let's say if you design, you're a coder, you're primarily a computer coder, you have all the skills to develop, design a lot of softwares, applications, analytics. You design a very beautiful product. But while designing that product, you forgot or missed some of the areas of access and design, security and privacy into that particular application. Let's say you roll that out. and then tomorrow you create a bug bounty program. That's the reason why a lot of applications, a lot of organizations uh, offer a bug bounty program. The bug bounty program is, instead of having my own in-house team to test my application, I will put a beta version onto the internet and ask the people to identify gaps and vulnerabilities in that particular application. And I'll reward you if you find vulnerability. What's the benefit for me as an organization or a particular company? There are thousands and thousands of people attempting to find gaps in that application for the goal of a reward, for a goal of a recognition. And for me, my application gets secure by default, because the bug bounty hunters, will identify and come back with a vulnerability in which I'll be able to patch it without investing huge amount into a testing team. So this kind of approach, a crowd testing program is termed as a bug bounty program. If I want to test an application or a tool or a portal, anything, by a crowd, that is known as a bug bounty program. Now here, if coming from browsing standpoint, from my basic health or hygiene that I use over the internet, there are a lot of free ad blockers. McAfee, lot of free ad blockers are there. We should get those extensions onto Chrome or Edge. Upgrade our browsers as well, because the Edge is the latest browser from Microsoft or Chrome. And having those extensions, they would make sure those ads, those tracking cookies are blocked. Now with that help, whatever that information is being sent out from my system would get blocked, and I would be saved up from a lot of hassles around those ads. If you go through any of the privacy policies of Facebook, Twitter, Google, whatever, they will ask you a simple question under privacy. Do you want personalized, customized ads from us? If you say no, it would not stop you from getting those ads. It will simply respond with a message that from now on you will not get those personalized ads. You'll get non-customized ads. You'll still continue to get those ads, because the prime business, the motive is analytics for these organizations, the ads, the business, and that's how money is made. Now, it's our importance how and why and what are the different aspects through which we can keep our data information secure. Sure. Sure. From the dark web standpoint, if we talk about dark web, there is a browser most of us must be knowing. So first, hygiene that we need to make sure, if we are a security researcher and doing some research in the security, first of all, as I mentioned, it should not be a recommendation to go onto dark web right away, unless and until you go thorough with the prerequisites, the understanding around what it will give you. Because from psychological perspective as well, there may be content that is not for you to see. Drugs, child pornography, homicide, pay per kill, I mean anything that you can think about, all those bad, illegal, highly superlative illegal stuff happens over dark web. And the transactions happen through bitcoins. I'll talk about bitcoins as well, because that's the internet currency which works on a principle of blockchain. So the moment a block is created, bitcoins are released, and the transactions happen through the and Bitcoin is a very good technology that helps us in orchestrating into various I mean, from a ledger perspective, things cannot be altered. You will still have that information residing somewhere or the other. Let me also talk about some human aspect around Try that. Try that at home. Any word, if you keep the first and the last alphabet in its own place, write a sentence, write a complete sentence as a paragraph, and then do one thing, keep first and last alphabet of each word in its own place and jumble the content in the between. And then try reading that paragraph. You'll still be able to read that. Because our brains, our neural network, the neurons, similar to the AI, what AI engine does or what ML does, they learn repeatedly through some learning algorithms. They learn. So I'll give examples as well. Like tomorrow, the first time when you went from your home to your college, it took you a while to look out for turns, directions as well. Gradually, over the period where you are going daily, you'll know, like at particular distance, there would be a speed bump. There's a turn. There is a breakage in the road. There is a broken road or things like that. You'll get to know. You'll remember those. And it would, even while you're completely not focused while driving, you'll still be remembering that now I have to slow down because there is a speed bump and all of that, because your brains learn through those algorithms, through repeated algorithms. The first time is an impression and it joins those dots. And on the same lines, when you learn a language, you do not interpret the word every time you read it. Your brain has already captured that word in its own dictionary. So when you jumble the words in between and keep the first and last character in its own place, you'll be able to still interpret the particular sentence because your brain would be able to read that. How this human phenomena is exploited? This phenomena is exploited because with the help of this human behavior is exploited in spoofing the websites. Let's say you go onto a website of ICICIbank.com. There is I and C are repeatedly. If I jumble those words, still I may accidentally click on links of a website which would have these characters jumbled. So these are the few things, some human behaviors around some platform as a basic foundation around security and understanding around those, and why these things are important to be careful about. Wi-Fi. Things like when you are on a Wi-Fi, nowadays you're working from home. So let's say you're working something very critical, something very important for your business, for your application, and there may be few things. If I intercept your Wi-Fi that is there as a central source, I would be able to access that information, whatever that is getting transmitted through it, irrespective whatever data is there from your laptop, your TV, television, smart TV, your CCTV, everything. The only thing that I need would be intercepting your Wi-Fi. So, just like robbers, they would not break the main entry door to get into your house. They will come through doors, windows, any of the weak spots. Those are known as vulnerabilities. On the same lines, if there is anything in the environment, in the architecture of the design of application, anything, if there is a weak spot, they would intercept that, and through that they will enter your environment. So Wi-Fi, a home Wi-Fi is something which is very commonly weak. Many of us may have this admin username and password that is written on the box when it came. We have never changed that. We might be using a simple 1, 2, 3, 4 password for our SSID. Things like that. And best part is, like, we have the ability to map the MAC addresses of our devices with the Wi-Fi device, and that would help. And disable the broadcasts. If you're using a home Wi-Fi router, disable the broadcast because there are no guests coming in. You're always using your devices to connect, and those devices are already paired. Why do you need a continuous broadcast? Some basic hygiene around home Wi-Fi. And similarly, if you are at the airport, imagine I make a personal hotspot of my mobile phone. Simply, if I make a personal hotspot of my mobile phone and rename it as, let's say, Delhi Airport T3, most of the people without a password, I mean, people will join in, simply join in without a password, and they can, I can completely view whatever they are doing. So when you're accessing anything for free, just make sure you are the product, because nothing comes for free. There are no free lunches. So anything that is there coming for free, if you're at a mall, asked to put in for your, there was a question in the chat as well. So the information that we share, our username, not only the username, but the email address, the phone number and your email address are more than sufficient for me or anybody, a hacker, to compromise your entire identity, your financial identity, your banking, your social media, anything. Because these two things, these are termed as personal identifiable information, PII. These two things, if these are exposed, people will be able to link that. There is a lot of data. Now, just go onto a website. Let's say you go onto a website that's have I been pawned. I'll type in here in the chat as well. So this is the website. This website is something which where you put in your email address, email ID, and it will give you all the breaches that email ID has been compromised with. So let's say it will give you the timeline as well, and all that associated information that is available over dark web linked to that email ID. And how you can safeguard that? Just make sure you periodically renew your passwords with a passphrase and things like that. Have a multi-factor authentication. At least use other devices. There are other ways of, apart from OTPs, there are ways to get multi-factor authentication. There are emails. There are alternate email IDs. There are even, let's say, iOS, you get another device as an option to authenticate, not only using the OTP. And there's another app that says, this app, Signal. We use WhatsApp. We use a lot of apps for communication. They say it's an encrypted communication. But what about your DNS? What about your ISP? Do you understand? I mean, have you explored DNS and ISP? What vulnerabilities are there? And ISP has, and by ISP I mean your internet service provider. It may be Airtel, it may be Tata, it may be anything. It may be Idea, whatever. That internet service provider, your ISP, has the ability to broadcast advertisements in your system over the network. And that is with the help of the DNS. And that's why there are various services, VPN services comes into play. So why do we need VPN? That is for anonymity. I understand that, and we all understand VPNs are used for anonymity, to make a communication more secure and being anonymous. Now let's say, but why there is the, if we further go deep dive into that particular why VPNs are required, that's the reason. Because you are not absolutely sure if the DNS or your ISP is being monitored. And that's where surveillance comes into play. Now, there may be surveillance, some man in the middle surveilling of your traffic. That's why we have Cloudflare. There are so many DNS service providers that gives you an option to use a VPN service, so that whatever is communicated, it is communicated through even Google 8888. There is an app over the internet, or sorry, iOS and Android. I've typed that here as well. So 1111. This is a free app provided by Cloudflare, and this app is something which gives you a free VPN. And how it will give you, although it's a paid app, if you want anything beyond 1 GB of data transmission over a period, I guess that's a daily or a monthly, whatever. But that's primarily more than sufficient for our transactions over the mobile device. Having a 111, this will give you a DNS, it will give you a VPN, your DNS would be routed through a completely different direction. A complete route is changed. And that's why we use VPN. When you're using your home Wi-Fi, if you go into your settings, today just go into the settings of your home Wi-Fi, properties, check IPv4. There is a settings, there is a configuration IPv4. Go into that properties of IPv4. You can disable IPv6 because that may or may not be needed because of multiple reasons. But IPv4, go on to that particular settings. In that particular settings, you'll see the DNS server is the server given by your ISP, your router, your broadband, your internet. You can route that to a different DNS. 8.8.8.8. That's something another DNS. That's Google DNS. You can use a Google DNS because Google by default has all your visibility already with the help of all your internet search that you do and all. It's captured in the history. You can get that historical view of your things that you have already shared with Google with the permission of yours. So using that DNS is also an option to make your transaction, your traverse more, at least avoid your man-in-the-middle attacks. There is also something as I was saying about, I'm typing in the chat. R okay, sorry, PRFTY. I've typed it in the chat. So this is something another Kaspersky Labs is again another security service provider. Now there is a website here. This is a website where you can put in, you can understand, don't put in your original password as a recommendation. Don't put in your password and test the strength. It is recommended because it may not be this Kaspersky website, but there may be some tracking cookies onto your browser. So just as a play around, you can go onto this link and just play around and look at how much time it will take for a password to be cracked. You can put in random passwords. Now, protonmail.com. This is something, another important thing that I use, a lot of security researchers use. The email, the public, the private, not only the private, sorry, the public email that we use, like Gmail, the free emails that we use. So they still have a lot of ads running because let's say again, you're onto Amazon. I get those ads onto my Gmail ad window at the top as well. How does Gmail know that I was looking for a particular product over Amazon? So it's crawling, it's crawling my information. But Proton Mail is something which is another very important domain. The data center is, from physical standpoint, the data center is in the mountains inside the Alps. I guess, if I'm not mistaken, the data center is somewhere in Switzerland inside the mountains. That level of physical security is there. And with the guidelines of Switzerland, they do not disclose anything private to an individual. They take utmost care around privacy. So Proton Mail is based out of Switzerland. The servers are based out of Switzerland. It will give, if you have used Snapchat, so things like Snapchat, it's there. Things like you have options to send emails with passwords in it. So only the sender and recipient can open that email. it has option to delete that email after a particular period. It will have option to delete that email after it's being read. So all of that, there are multiple options. It's the current edge, a secure way of communication over an email. So these are few apps as well which you can explore. And now quickly wrapping up now with some questions. How to yes, your data, it gets sold out, because when you are, as I mentioned, if you're in a mall, if you're anywhere, things like these, they will these are sold, and it has a particular price tag associated with it, because with that, people, bad guys, have an opportunity to exploit that information further. I'll Apart from one last aspect around cryptojacking. Cryptojacking is something as that may be very common nowadays. Cryptojacking is something where your computer is working for someone else. And by that I mean there is a malware. When I connect to internet, the processing and the memory, the RAM, the processes, all of that, some portion of that gets utilized for mining the Bitcoin. So people, instead of investing into creation of their own data centers and labs, they do cryptojacking, utilize others' electricity, others' infrastructure to mine those Bitcoins. All right, so if I'll quickly take a pause, and we are at the edge of the hour, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Else, I'll close this session, and I'll be happy to answer questions offline. You can connect with me over Twitter. It's Archie_Jackson. I'm available over LinkedIn as well. I'll recommend you subscribe to the channel, and also ensure the notification is turned on, so that as I upload new videos, new information, you get that information as well. And do go through some of the videos, some of the content, because of lack of time I didn't touch upon. But there are a lot of videos, especially in Hindi. This channel is a Hindi channel, where you'll get to know a lot of conceptual thought process. I'll also upload a video around why and how we should incorporate security into our career. So, yep, thank you everyone for being patient listeners, and great to have you all. Thank you, Manav, Rachna, for inviting me, and I'll be happy to conduct subsequent sessions. Looking forward to have more audience onto such sessions, and happy to further engage. Thank you. God bless. Take care.